The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you with the help of our sponsor, AWeber, the world's leading small business email marketing and automation service provider. Since 1998, AWeber has helped more than 1 million small businesses and entrepreneurs through its suite of web-based email marketing, automation tools, and education. AWeber, the best option when it comes to marketing your business. The podcast is also brought to you by the Alternative Board. Since 1989, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has been one of the leading peer advisory and business coaching organizations for independent business owners and CEOs across the world. By facilitating peer advisory boards, private one-on-one coaching, and strategic planning services, TAB helps business owners improve their businesses in ways that change their lives. And be sure to check out our affiliate sponsor, One of One Productions, the New Jersey-based podcast studio that produces and edits both audio and video podcasts. They sell equipment for the avid podcaster and have even created a guesting kit exclusively for our listeners. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services. Okay. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I have another great guest today. I think, if my memory serves me right, this might be our first guest who's appeared on Shark Tank. I'm pretty sure, Arsy, but I got to look into the archives. I don't think so. I think you're the first. So if you are listening on your favorite directory, be sure to give us a 5-star review if you can. Not all the directors allow you to do that. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe, hit the like button, ring a bell. I don't know, whatever else you do on YouTube, so we can keep bringing you good content. So let's get on with the show. And then Arsy will introduce himself and we'll start hearing about his background.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhacker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode.
All right. So, Arsy, welcome to the show. I believe I met you because my daughter, right, who is a journalism major at Maryland, sought you out and interviewed you for, I don't know, the school paper or a project. She's working on something like that, right?
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's accurate. The Diamondback newspaper.
Oh, the Diamondback. Okay, that's the school. That's the University of Maryland paper.
Correct.
Cool.
Yep.
It shows you so much she tells me. So, all right. So, welcome to the show. I did say before, and I'm pretty sure that you are the only guest I've had on so far who's been on Shark Tank. This will be coming out probably in the middle of the summer. So, you were on in March. Your episode aired, right?
It aired on March 10th. I actually went to film in September. So
yeah, I'm sure it takes a while to write. Okay. Well, maybe after the commercials we can get into, because I want to hear about, how do you get on Shark Tank? What do you have to go through? What kind of hoops do you have to jump through? And, how long did it take and things like that? But because I'm sure a lot of listeners want to know, maybe they own a business, they want to apply. But maybe we go back and talk about your background, because I know you weren't originally an entrepreneur. And then we can get into Woof and how you fell into that and the experiences you have. Does that make sense?
That sounds great. Let's do it.
Okay. So go backwards.
Yeah, so I was probably the opposite of an entrepreneur growing up. I come from a family of doctors, and they typically tend to push you to try to go into medicine, right? So I'll start at my college days when I went to the University of Maryland. I was a biology major, actually.
Okay.
And but I always had an outgoing personality. I kind of felt like I wasn't really meant to be in a hospital all day, and it just didn't seem like it would be for me. So while I continued with that, I graduated with a biology degree. I also decided I'm not going to take my MCATs, and I'm going to try to go into sales right after college. And I was interning at a company called Doctor First, which is a healthcare IT company. They sell software for doctors and hospitals to use. And
got it.
I was interning there, and that's when I really got the idea to actually try to go into sales. It was my senior year. I actually went up to the CEO and I said, hey, listen, I'm graduating in a couple of months. I don't want to go down the medical school pathway. I want to go into sales. And he said, hey, I appreciate you coming up to me like this and talking to me about this. I'm going to give you a shot. And when he did, I started, right after I graduated out of college, and I did really well. I knew from that point on, within a few weeks, that I wanted to be in sales the rest of my career in some form or fashion.
Yeah, it didn't matter that it was healthcare necessarily, right?
No, that was just the gateway. I actually ended up moving out of healthcare to property management.
Okay.
And also to I eventually went to media. So healthcare, that was just an easy entry point because of my background in biology. But yeah, I went into sales. I just loved every part about it. I love presenting. I love trying to, get people to see the value that you're trying to bring through your product or service.
Right.
And so now today I have about 8+ years of sales experience. And that brought me to New York City.
Yeah.
And that's where the origin story of Woof started.
That's where you are now. You're in your apartment in New York City?
Yeah, I live in the Upper East Side of New York. Yeah.
Nice.
Big change from Maryland.
Yeah, big change.
Yeah, and when I moved to New York, it's I think that's actually the spark of the entrepreneurial spirit that I got. I got here and I just saw all these high rises. I saw all these successful people all around me.
Yeah.
I wasn't in my close group of friends that I would hang out with every weekend. So I was seeing new people, meeting new people every day. And I knew I wanted to do something of my own at that point when I moved to New York City, which is about 2 years ago. And
but you moved for the job. You moved for the media sales job, right?
I moved for the job, correct. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And I had 3 dogs in Maryland too. And when I moved to New York, it was a handful. And when I moved to New York, I picked a spot in the Upper East Side because that's close to the parks for my dogs. And I was driving actually one day to go hiking at Bear Mountain, close to New York City. And my dogs were at home. And again, my family and friends are all back in Maryland. This is close to when I first moved to New York. So I didn't really know anyone, especially no one I could just call to come over and watch my dogs. You had no
girlfriend, no spouse, nobody you lived with, roommates? No.
I had my fiance, but she was with me. So we were both together.
Okay, right, okay.
So that's how families,
that's you and the dogs.
Exactly, yeah. So dogs were at home. Me and my fiance are driving.
Right.
I almost got into a car accident. And it's kind of weird. Like immediately this whole idea just flew into my head. That because I personally had this fear where if something happened to me, my dogs would be trapped at home alone. Just a feeling I always had in the back of my head every time I leave. And so immediately this idea came into my head, the whole concept of Woof, that we could rescue your pet with technology if something happened to you unexpectedly, like a car accident away from home or a heart attack in home. And I got home that night. I started making a PowerPoint deck because that's how I knew how to do it for my sales presentation skills. And I crafted to this design for the app, pretty basic. I then started to do research on, paying someone to make an app for me.
Right.
Saw that was extremely expensive to do.
Yeah.
And I remember that I had a friend who actually made an app years ago through a developer.
Uh-huh.
So I reached out to him and got the contact information, called him that night. Everything was, I wanted to act right away. I didn't want to wait and let this idea pass.
Right. So this was a guy who could program, but it wasn't like some big company you got to pay a lot of money to develop an app, right? You don't have to do that nowadays if you network and you find somebody.
Yeah. You could go that route if you want, if you have a lot of money, but I think the better route is to, try to, even services like Upwork or Fiverr can get you cheap developers.
Yeah.
So I had a limited budget to spend on an idea. So I spoke to him. The price point was pretty reasonable. He said he could do it. And I signed the contract literally that night. So I think that's important point number one.
That was the night you got back from your trip?
The night I got back. I started sending out messages.
Well, let's put a fire under you.
I was up till like midnight that night. And I think that's an important point. If you have an idea, I think a lot of times people just say, it's a good idea, but they don't act on it.
Right.
And I
knew
they see
you on Shark Tank with this Woof thing, and they're like, I had that same idea. They didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Right. Probably, that's true.
So if that's you, go back to that idea and act on it. So so I signed the contract that night for him to develop it. And as it's in development,
now you kept your job, right? I mean, this was like a side gig type of a thing, right?
Yeah, totally a side gig thing because no revenue's coming in when it's in development.
Yeah.
And while it was in development, I was, building the website, doing all the back end stuff, like getting business cards with QR codes. So I had everything in my control that I could do, creating the LLC, getting the bank account set up and going. In the back end, while the app's in development, I took care of that. And, thought of some ideas for how to market it, sell it, all that
So you're
stuff.
basically writing a business plan, a working business plan, figuring out all the parts. How's it going to work? What's the cost going to be? What services do we need? What back office support? How can you sell it? All that type of stuff?
Exactly, yeah. Doing research on how, how we would actually rescue the pets if something happened to the owner.
Yeah, right. You figure you can probably sell the thing and figure, nobody's going to call for a little while. And then you got to be ready to act, right?
Yeah, I guess I'll just give a brief description of how it actually works before I go further into how the whole Shark Tank thing happened. So the app, the way I thought of it was I knew wellness checks are a free government service because I have 2 police officer friends, and it's a topic that we've discussed one time in my past. So I knew that was a thing I could help utilize the service. So I also, everyone knows geolocation these days if you use a smartphone, right?
Right.
So the idea was I could use a geolocation-based timer and use that to identify if the owner of the pet is, in danger or something happened.
Basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way the app works is it forms a circle around your house about 50-meter diameter. When you cross that border, the timer that you've set one time that you preset, the app remembers, it'll start ticking down. And if you don't return back home to stop the timer, maybe something happened to you. That's what we find out. The support team gets notified if your timer expires. We reach out to you, then your emergency contact list. And if no one knows where you are, then we contact the local authorities who will come do a wellness check.
So wellness checks are available in most communities? I mean, if you had an aunt or a grandmother, or whatever, you couldn't find her, you could call the police?
All 50 states.
Okay. All
50 states, even Canada. It's our next target market. Any place that has a wellness check, Woof could potentially move into. But yeah, the way it works is I could call one for you, Mitch. I could say, hey, go check on Mitch. I haven't heard from him for a while.
Right.
And they would legally have to
do that. You just be like, I haven't heard from Mitch in 4 weeks. Can you go check and see if he's dead in his apartment? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we would have, the evidence with the app to kind of give the police, what they needed. Like they haven't been home in so many hours or so. But yeah, the police would go. If you are not there, they'd enter the home. Maybe you are home. Maybe you had a heart attack in your house.
Right.
They'd tend to you there, but they'd also legally have to take your pet as well and keep that pet safe and get animal control involved. But ideally, we're also contacting your emergency contacts, maybe your brother, and also your designated pet guardian, which you capture in the app, as well as everything else about your pet, like their daily routines, their medical history, all that stuff, documents.
Right.
So we're contacting your pet guardian that you've designated as well.
Yeah.
And letting them know that this is a situation and they should go, pick up the pet. So ideally that's what would come and pick up the pet, not animal control. But either way, any scenario is better than your pet being trapped at home alone and being traumatized, or worst case, maybe even, dying of starvation. And one thing I did when I first had the idea is I looked this up. Is this actually a thing that happens?
Right.
And it is. There's pets that have been, and they've eaten their owners. It's some crazy scenarios out there.
I've heard disgusting stories like that.
Yeah. So back to the whole business concept, right?
Yeah.
So while I was in development, I was doing my business plan, and my friend suggested that I apply to Shark Tank. And I everyone knows about Shark Tank, but I probably have maybe seen a segment here or there. I never was a big watcher of the show, but I applied. I just went on the website and I filled out a form.
Well, when was it that you started developing? When did you do the hike and you came back? When was that date? What was the date that you started?
That was like mid-February.
Of what year?
February 2022.
Oh, recently.
Yeah, very recent.
Take that quick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
Wow.
So the timeline is I had the idea mid-February.
Right.
Development started a week after that, probably. We had the plans together, and then he started developing a week after that. And then I applied to Shark Tank, I would say, in April, mid-April.
But you didn't have any revenue or anything at that point, did you?
Just an idea. But development was going very quick.
Right.
It's not but you
had the parts. I mean, you knew about the wellness checks, and you knew about the about the location issues and things like that, and be able to track it. So you knew it was doable.
Yeah, and when I applied, I didn't mention to Shark Tank what my revenue
no, they don't
was
have that stuff, right?
They don't ask that when you first apply. No.
Okay.
And there's two ways you can apply. You can apply online or you can do in person, but because of COVID, in person wasn't a thing, right? They had like casting calls. So I did the online form. They also actually have a team that reaches out to companies proactively and say, hey, you should come on Shark Tank.
They see you, right? I'm sure. Yeah.
But I'm the one who I'm in the smaller bucket. The harder bucket to get in is I actually just applied to Shark Tank.
Right.
And I thought,
no, because they got to get
fun.
thousands of applications, and a lot of they just toss aside and don't look at.
Yeah, there's about 50,000 applicants that they go through every year.
Yeah.
So it's a big pool.
Right.
And so I applied. I thought that that was fun. Nothing's going to come of that. And then three or 4 weeks later,
of applying to raise money, right? To get a shark.
Yeah.
This thing.
I wanted
right.
I guess the quickest way I thought that I could build this up to something is through a shark and the exposure and everything that comes along with Shark Tank, the doors it opens, right? So yeah, I applied for that reason. And 3 weeks later,
here he's got a lot of things in the pet space. I think he does, right?
Yeah, a few of them do. Like Mark's done like a pet food. Yeah. So I think all of them have some investments in the pet space because they all know it's a $100 billion industry. It's a massive industry.
They'll kill themselves and save their pets. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. And so I heard back, it was from one of like the casting producers via email, and they were like, hey, let's set up a call.
Yeah.
And I was like, at that point I was like, okay, this isn't going to go anywhere. There's so many people that apply. And I took the call, and when I took the call, I had COVID, and I almost
at the time.
Yeah, I almost ended up rescheduling the call, but I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna power through it, man up, and do it.
Okay.
And thankfully, I did.
This wasn't with one of the guys on Shark Tank, one of the panelists, right?
No, this is literally just a casting producer, someone in California.
Yeah.
And so I did the call, explained it to them. They're like, okay, this is worthy for us to at least have you submit a video submission to try to woo us to take you to the next stage. So the only thing I knew how to do was to mimic what is actually on Shark Tank. So I watched a few episodes, and I literally I put a tripod up, put my phone in there. I just came up with a quick 2-minute video pitch. And I had the Shark Tank music playing when I walked up to the camera. And it was a pretty decent video. And I sent that to them, and then 2 weeks go by again, and then they call me actually, and they're like, "Hey, that video is actually really good. We want to move you to the next stage, which is have you interview with a producing team." And I interviewed with these producers on a Zoom, and they were awesome people. Probably my two favorite people I've met. That I've worked with professionally.
You got to remember, they're not looking for necessarily good businesses. They're looking for good content. So they want you, a nice, good personality. You look good on camera. That's what they're looking for. Yeah,
exactly. And so after that, you don't know you're actually going on until 3 days before.
3 days?
3 days before. Yeah. The entire time, they're like, yeah, you have a really good chance to be on. I met with them once a week, twice a week.
Right.
Made my pitch, and then they reviewed it. And got myself TV ready.
Did they fly you out there?
Yeah, they fly you out there.
We're flying you out there 3 days.
Yeah. Well, they bought your ticket, but then they're like, there's a chance we might decide to not bring you up. And then they officially say, okay, you're going to get on that plane 3 days before.
Got it.
Give you, 3 different COVID tests to make sure everyone's safe.
Right.
I land in California, Culver City. And that was in September. And I was actually
start working on the idea in February. It's now September.
Yeah.
What stage? So obviously there was no stage of the business when you first got involved, and now things have been progressing. What stage is the business at in September, in this past September?
Yeah. So I had 100, actually I literally hit 100 users, paying subscribers on the day I went to pitch on Shark Tank. And that was my milestone. I need to hit 100.
Right.
I remember I was at 99 the day before. I need to get another subscriber. I went and I handed out cards, and the night I landed in California.
And it was up on the App Store and Apple and Google or whatever.
Yeah. So it actually launched on the App Store on Memorial Day. That's what I mentioned that date.
Oh, so from the concept in February, you got a working app and launched the app in less than 4 months.
Yeah. The app that was on the store the first day launch was very basic, right? It was the timers worked. And then this is actually crazy thing that happened. I had one of my neighbors on the first floor of my apartment had an overdose and died.
Geez.
And and their dog was inside the apartment. And obviously the way Woof was designed at that time wouldn't have been able to help.
No, because he's still in the apartment.
Yeah. So, and that dog was trapped in there for like 2 days. And the only way the landlord discovered this is because he like knew her pretty well, and he didn't hear from her. So he called her cell phone, and he heard her cell phone in the apartment, and he knocked. She didn't answer, and he heard the dog barking, but then he decided to call 911 to come do a wellness check. And she was, deceased at that point, and the dog was in there, and it was a rough situation. But I was like, well, okay, I need to solve this issue too. So I decided to do a reverse away timer. So basically, you set a timer for how long you have to not leave your home before we check in on you.
Oh, interesting. So if you don't leave your house for like 3-4 days or a week or whatever, it would be like ding, 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 something's wrong.
Yeah, you set the timer. I set mine for 50 hours. So if I don't leave my radius in 50 hours, then support gets triggered. We check.
Right. You got to go get food or something, right? You got to get out at some point. So go ahead. I have a lot of questions for you, but go ahead.
So I added that in, and at this point, once it was launched and like a month has gone by, I knew that there was a good chance I could potentially be on Shark Tank. So my whole goal was to dump as much money into this app to get
now you got to get your numbers up, because you're going to go be one of these guys. They'll be like, well, what kind of business do you have? You say, well, we're still in development. It's a good idea. We're working on it. They'll be like, yeah, get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. So my goal was to get users up, get features. I had a bunch of features. Like I wanted to add the pet record, the pet passport, as I call it, into the app. That wasn't a thing at the time when I launched it. And so I got that in there. I optimized the UI. I wanted to make it ready to be shown to like Mark Cuban. If he's like, hey, we're going to do a deal. If you saw it and it wasn't in a good shape, he would probably back out of the deal. Right. So those are my two concerns.
How are you promoting? What was the marketing strategy? How are you promoting the app? I know you don't just, maybe in the old days you put an app up on the website, on the app store, and people start downloading it, but I don't think that happens anymore because there's so many of them. Right. So here's the thing. So the name of the app, Woof, I didn't know this at the time, but that's a pretty common like app term, search term. So my app, if you searched Woof at the time, was like 50 apps down. Right.
Same with on Google. If you searched Woof at the time, it would be like 10 pages down.
Right.
And now luckily it's the first thing on both. It's second on Google, first in the App Store. So
because
it's right
of SEO and stuff like that.
Yeah, Shark Tank. Actually, I could thank for that.
Oh, that helped. Right. Exactly.
But
right.
Yeah. So.
No, marketing.
Yeah. So
how to get users.
Marketing. Yeah. So I did it. So I put so much capital into developing the app that I really didn't have much left over to market. And my fiance was like, you're not going to spend money to market on like Facebook, which is what I wanted to do, Facebook and Instagram, social media.
Yeah.
She was like, if you get on Shark Tank, let that be your marketing. So what I did is I thought, okay, let me I ordered business cards with the QR code that would, if you scan it, it'll launch you to the website, which has the download list. I go, let me order like a couple thousand of those, and I will literally just go and I'll hand them out to any dog owner I see in New York City. Again, being in New York City allowed me to do this whole dream, because if I was in Maryland, I'd see one dog owner every day. But in New York, I'll see 500 if I go to the dog parks or whatever,
Right.
So access to this many people in a small volume really let me.
I mean, that's a short strategy, right? It's not obviously a long-term viability.
Exactly. So
one visiting people,
Yeah. So I'd go to the dog parks after work, during my lunch break, on weekends. I just sit there, hand out cards. I was that annoying guy handing out cards and, pitching. It also helped me craft my pitch, because I would pitch this to like literally probably 2,000, 3,000 people. And my pitch from the beginning to where I got to Shark Tank was like totally different. It was confusing. It would be like, we had these geolocation timers, and then I just changed it to this app rescues your pet, right? So the pitch just completely got refined.
People don't understand all that jargon and stuff. They're just, you're in the tech world. They're not, they no clue. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I didn't really market it too much besides that. But the 2,000 I did put on Facebook and social media, that did generate a good amount of user downloads and subscriptions. So
how many users you have now?
I have 450 paying subscribers and about like 2,500 App Store downloads. So the conversion rates It's pretty good.
Download the app and don't pay anything. Does it do anything for you?
No, which I'm actually changing this up. Yeah. So the way it works is you have to download it and pay to get access to the app. But I'm making a freemium version now where you can, set up your profile. You can use the pet record, but if you want to use the timers, you have to actually, pay to do that.
Yeah.
So that's coming out probably in the next month.
I think it's a good lesson for people because I find that a lot of business owners, they have this idea and they want it to be perfect and they're going to build the app and pull these things in. And, you're going to make mistakes anyway. So you got to get out there and test it and start using it and making your pitch, right? And then your pitch is not good or people don't understand it. It's like a lawyer. We talk in all kinds of jargon that we think is simple to us, but to other people, they have no idea what I'm talking about half the time. So I was trying to water it down and simplify it. So I think that there's a lot to be said for just getting out there with a working version of it and getting people to use it and break it and ask you questions and say, hey, why doesn't it do this? Or, and I think there's a lot to be said for that, as opposed to just sitting in your garage, staring at the wall and running your computer thinking it's perfect. You're going to be wrong anyway.
Yeah, you have to go out there and talk to the people that would actually, your potential customers, right? I had so many questions. I thought of so many features from talking to people, like vacation mode, where if you are on vacation and, the app could detect that and stop your timer for you.
Right,
so many things.
They're going to come and take your pet away while you're in Puerto Rico and you come back and your pet's gone.
Yeah. But luckily, there's steps before that would prevent that.
Call and you'll be like, listen, I'm in Puerto Rico and my pet's not there.
But if they're in who knows, Europe, they might not be able to get my phone call. So that's an important feature. So you have to get out there and talk to your potential customers to see, one, if they think it's a stupid idea.
Right.
And luckily, I probably talked to, like I said, thousands of people. Maybe 5 to 10 people said that they think it's not a good idea because they have friends or family that are around them.
But
for them, exactly.
They didn't think it was a bad idea in general. Just for them, it wasn't valuable.
For their scenario.
Yeah, most people, that's not the case.
Yeah, and my whole thing was that it's peace of mind. You're probably not going to have to ever use Woof, hopefully. But the idea is you want, just like life insurance, right? You buy life insurance for your family members.
Yeah.
People say pets are their family. So if that's true, prove it. Subscribe to Woof.
Every day, people's pets get left every day, just not you necessarily.
Yeah, exactly.
So is there a way to, or are you working on the idea of can you know whether the pet's with the person? Maybe there's a tag they can put on the pet on the collar or something that that when you leave, the pet's with you and therefore it doesn't set off the timers, or the pet's been moved to a kennel or something, I don't know, whatever. The pet's not in the house, basically. Yeah.
These are all things that I think are on the roadmap. Like, for example, one common suggestion people also make is syncing or integrating with a dog walking app like Wag or Rover. And I think that's probably something that's 2 years away. But right now, my main concern is to get user adoption and subscribers. And I actually have recently thought of, I think is going to take things completely to the next level. And what that is partnerships. So what I mean by partnerships is, let's say I approach
strategic alliances, business wise.
Yeah, let's say I approach a corporation, right?
Yeah.
And there's tons of them out there. They have employee benefits, right? They have gym perks, health insurance, life insurance, right? Why can't Woof be a part of that employee package?
Yeah, they have pet
where
it's rare, but sometimes they do.
Yeah. So I could, let's say, Google is hey, we want to work with you. I could wholesale thousands and thousands of licenses to Google where they could offer that to their employees. That's my number one partnership idea. Number two is nonprofit organizations like the Humane Society, who I actually spoke with on Wednesday, and the North Shore American League I spoke with actually right before this phone call.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to these corporations and organizations.
Big shelter around here.
Yeah. And the idea there is I would actually just give them licenses, donate them licenses, and anyone that renews after that 6-month period of trial, I would donate 10% of that revenue to that organization.
Dog, they get the app for free for 6 months. And then after that, they can renew it, and part of the money goes to the shelter, so they'll know that's a good idea. Actually, that's an excellent strategic.
Yeah, so that's my new model that I'm going to work with to get.
What you also should work on? You mentioned Rover. You should have let's say somebody's stuck out. They're not dead, or they're not stuck on a cliff, but they're oh my God, I can't get back to walk my dog. They should be able to press a button on the app. You guys notify Rover, whoever's designated in the area. They send someone to walk the to walk the dog. You just got to hide a key or something like that to get them in the streets, you know?
And usually the rovers that you have assigned, they might even have your key where they can just get in without. So definitely something that
I'm going to need keys. So
it's definitely something that's on the roadmap, I think. But probably I want to get at least a couple partnerships in, a couple thousand users.
Yeah.
Before I even explore any of that. So
all right. Well, why don't we do this? So let's take a commercial. I think commercials run about 2 minutes, and then we come back. I want to talk to you about, what do you like about being an entrepreneur? What kind of things have you learned? And then maybe we can also get more into Shark Tank, because I did watch the episode and they brought up some issues. I have some questions for you, where you are now, and, get some people excited about maybe ideas that they're running through their head and they're not acting on. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good.
Take a commercial break here.
Here's a word from our sponsors.
Looking to market and grow your business? Or perhaps you're just getting started and want to hit the ground running? Aweber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation of your business. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, Aweber gives you tools and integrations to make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use all their tools to promote the podcast and market our law firm. Aweber, the best alternative for online marketing. For over 30 years, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has built a thriving community of forward-thinking CEOs and business owners who want to radically improve their companies. Through unique combinations of one-on-one business coaching, participation in monthly TAB board meetings with other non-competing owners, a suite of strategic tools, and customized strategic planning workshops, TAB membership can deliver greater strength to your business and a better work-life balance for you and your family. All packaged in a streamlined and affordable service that the people at TAB invite you to try risk-free. Maybe you're looking to get into podcasting, or you just want to market your business. Maybe you want to do it for enjoyment, or because you have a message you want to get out there. One of One Productions is a New Jersey-based studio just over the George Washington Bridge that caters to the booming business of podcasting. They offer a comfortable atmosphere using the latest technology available to record your podcast. And they are a full-service media company offering both audio and video production services, creating both audio and video podcasts, as well as video shorts for business and personal use. Professional audio equipment packages are available through their website for all budgets. And be sure to check out their podcast guesting kit, created especially for our listeners.
Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show.
So, Arsy, we know you like being a salesperson. Do you like being an entrepreneur?
It is, I think, 10 times better than being a salesperson. Yeah.
By the way,
because
the first thing you need to be is a salesperson, because if you're an introvert, probably not the route for you,
Yeah. And actually, I have a good story around this. So
okay, good.
I've been at two types of corporate organizations, the startup atmosphere in my career, and also a massive corporation like NBC, right? And I really just did not like the massive corporation style.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. There's just too many decision makers that are involved for simple things that if you just said yes and moved forward with it,
right,
then so much would get done a lot quicker too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And corporate politics. And so being at NBC, I think me being at NBC and the whole story I told you with the almost having a car accident, I think those things were perfectly aligned, because I was so unhappy at my NBC corporate job that I wanted to do my own thing or go back. Or go back to a startup company.
If you were happier, you'd probably be like, oh, that's a great idea. But you know what? I like my job and I love what I'm doing, and probably never would have done it. Yeah.
Exactly. So I did really well in the startup atmosphere, working for other people, but I always did want something of my own.
Yeah.
And when you're selling something that's not yours, the paycheck's good, but when you're selling something that's actually yours and you get to make the decisions, you get to craft the roadmap for what gets built and the decisions, and you're leading the conversations. It's just so much more fulfilling.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like, I would be up till midnight, and you always hear it's, when you're working for yourself, you're not working. It's true. It's like you're investing. I consider it. You're investing in whatever you're doing,
but it's not work.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was in corporate. We lived in Columbus, Ohio for about 2-3 years, 2 years, I think. And I worked for Nationwide. I barely made it 2 years. I mean, I just couldn't. Yeah, I mean, just as an attorney and as an entrepreneur, and I just couldn't do it. So eventually I got to some organizations and got out on my own too. I think there's a lot of creativity when you, especially if you're in sales and you're seeing ideas, you're doing stuff, and it's hard when you're under an organization where they just have rules and they have processes and you got to wait for this and that. Nothing gets done. That's why big companies buy like a small company like yours, because it would be like a nightmare for them to develop this on their own.
And there was actually one specific story that I remember. I was at NBC, and the head of my department, she, probably my least favorite director or boss I've ever had in my life. She was very, like, I guess, controlling or power shifting in that sense. And I remember I was in a presentation, and I prepped for like 2 weeks for these, the executives at NBC. I was ready to go crush it. And I got like 5 seconds into my talk, and she cut me off and just took over the whole thing. And I remember I was so, I think angry is the term that I would use, that I, kind of suppressed. But that really got under my skin. And after that, I was like, if you hired me to do a job, let me do the job. Right. And she did it. And I think there's a lot of people like that in the corporate world that, they'll hire you, but they think that they should just do everything themselves. And it's a toxic environment. And I'm against that more than anything. And that really pushed me to entrepreneurship, that one specific moment.
Yeah. That's the reason why leadership and leadership training and coaching is a thing, because a lot of these people in corporate America are not good leaders. Like, that's not being a good leader. A good leader encourages you to do what you were brought in to do, and she trained you, whatever, not take things over. Doesn't create a good, working relationship. It doesn't encourage you to develop. So that's the,
it's like, if she didn't trust me to do a basic presentation, which I mean, you saw me at Shark Tank, I think I can handle a presentation. You were
preparing, and you put all that time and effort in. You're like, what the heck did I do this for? Yeah. So let's talk about things that you've learned that you would do differently as an entrepreneur. Because you really came into this thing. It wasn't like you came out of business school. You had a business and you sat down and wrote a business plan. I'm going to do this, that. It kind of all happened at the same time. So I'm curious as to a little bit of a look back. What are some of the challenges you had? What did you learn? What advice do you give for other people doing this?
Yeah, I think navigating the investment world with someone with no knowledge of that is something you should probably brush up on before you start reaching out to like VCs, which is what I did. The moment I kind of knew Shark Tank was a possibility, I was like, I need to get funding to make all my updates that I want to do. Yeah, because I need to make updates. I need money to do this now. And so I started reaching out to VCs, and you always hear this like, we're pre-seed. We'll invest in ideas, and I don't think that's true. Everyone I talked to,
but they're not going to do it.
Yeah. So I ended up getting meetings with like 5 different VCs, and they were like, "Oh, this is a great idea. Come back to us when you have $1 million+ in revenue ARR." And I was like, I thought you were pre-seed. And, and so, and then like
angel investors are more private, they'll take more risks. These guys were real VCs.
Real VCs. Yeah. And then, they were using terms like, data room, which I didn't know what that meant at the time. And so, understanding like how the investment world works. If you're actually trying to raise money, some people just have money, or they have friends or family that want to contribute and help them out. But if you are trying to raise money from other people, then knowing that landscape will be helpful.
Yeah, there are, especially in New York, there are like pitch contests and, angel meetings and stuff. And I've known some people that have gone just with the intent of like giving 10 pitches and failing and just learning what these guys want, and with no intent of raising any money. Some of them did anyway, but they really just went to hone their skills I guess if you go in the expectation that you're going to get eaten alive by the panel, it's not so bad when it happens, because you're kind of ready for it.
It's funny. There's one called Rise New York. I'm not sure if you've heard of it.
I think I've heard of them.
It's once a month, and basically the way it works, it's kind of like a Shark Tank style setup. Like you apply as a company, and they choose 5 people from the 5 companies that will present and pitch to this guy man or woman that's on the couch
Got it.
And they're the investor, right? And they hear you pitch, and then they decide if they want to invest in you or not. And so I was told about the event. I went to one, and I was like, this is just like Shark Tank.
Yeah.
And I started applying every month. You fill out a form on your product and your company, and you apply. And I applied literally 7 times, and I never got chosen once. And this is after Shark Tank. I got chosen by Shark Tank out of 50,000 people,
And you still get chosen.
And not out of 100 companies that applied every month. I just never got picked. So I stopped going to that event.
Right.
But the people I heard pitch, their companies were they're more in like
go as an attendee, right? You just as an observer.
Yeah, if you're an entrepreneur, you can go, and they also choose one random company from the crowd to pitch. And I never got chosen there either. But the companies were more like climate tech, fintech. Not really. I think it's another thing. Like, some people don't take the pet industry seriously, or they don't know how big it is. It's $100 billion industry.
Yeah,
it's
right.
massive.
Exactly. Huge.
I don't think people know that. So
I mean, just walk around and see everybody what they do for their pets. Yeah,
it's a gold mine, honestly.
Yeah, it's a gold mine. I have older dogs, and my little one has eye problems. And we went to this, the eye specialist. This guy only does eyes for dogs and cats. You'd think he has like an ATM machine in his backyard just printing money. The place was a palace, and it's not cheap to, like, your dogs don't drive your kids to school or have to go to work. I mean, if they can't see, they probably don't have a good vision to begin with. But people will spend money to have cataracts removed to fix it. $10,000, $20,000 not covered by insurance, and they do it. And it's a money mill,
Yeah, I pay $150 for my 3 dogs for insurance a month. So
yeah, exactly. And you've used insurance?
Actually, I have. I've used it twice now. And one of my pugs, they were really sick, and it probably would have been like a $2,000 hospital bill.
Yeah,
it was totally covered. So yeah, and if anything ever happens serious, like a massive surgery, then you definitely want pet insurance.
Yeah, so. Big time. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Shark Tank process, because I'm curious as to, I understand you got picked, so you went through the casting thing, but I also understand that you don't spend 10 minutes in front of them. That's all we see on the show, right? I mean, they grill you for a while, don't they?
Yeah. So wow. So here's the thing: when you go in the tank, first of all, I honestly barely remember being in there because you were just so amped up on adrenaline.
Right. Adrenaline is going crazy.
It's like you're in a dream.
Right.
And so I wasn't even really sure how long I was in there, but if I had to guess, I would say probably 45 minutes.
Okay.
And they obviously cut out a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, they want a clip, right? Of course.
Like I talked about, like the home timer and like the pet passport, but they cut all that stuff out to keep it really simple, I guess, on just like the away timer scenario. But they're grilling you on everything.
What kind of?
And I know you had some questions on.
Yeah.
The typical ones like your background, and I kind of thought after I did my pitch that they would start with like, tell us about yourself. I thought there was like a kind of a layout, but no, they like Mr. Wonderful went right in like, have you made any money? Yeah. So, and then they kind of circled back to like, tell us about your background. Do you have any other investors? It really is like I guess a dramatized business meeting with an investor. Yeah. It's a real thing, and there's no do-overs. You can't go out there, mess up, and then be like, hey, I need
cut
to redo that.
Yeah.
It's none of that. If you go out there and you mess up and it's a bad segment, you probably won't get aired.
Yeah. No.
So
it wasn't even guaranteed you would air.
Oh no. So 50,000 people apply. About 1,000 get to like the next stage. 160-ish actually get invited to pitch, and then about like 80 to 90 actually get aired. So 80 to 90 companies out of 50,000 actually end up on TV. So, and that was one of my fears. Is like, hey, I could say I was on Shark Tank, but there's no proof if I don't get aired.
Exactly.
It's like it never even happened.
You tried to appear on Shark Tank, and it doesn't help your marketing plan, right? Your marketing plan was, I'm going to get a ton of exposure. I think in some cases it's better not to get a deal and just get the exposure, because you don't give up any equity in the company, and you probably get a ton of sales just from people seeing you and watching it on TV,
Yeah, and the Shark Tank community is pretty tight knit. Like after I aired, like some other sharks actually emailed me and like added me on Facebook
on the show that weren't on your episode.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, other people that actually went on the show, and there's like a Shark Tank reunion that's happening in Las Vegas, where like, you know, all the other people that went on the show.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really supportive community, and people are, there's a group of us that are, you know, giving each other business advice all the time on there. So it's a really tight knit community.
So that's helped your business just by being involved with the Shark Tank ecosphere, or whatever the heck they call it.
Yeah. And then after it aired, man, like the live chat on my website exploded that night. I was, you know, watching the segment at a watch party with all my friends in Maryland. And then I immediately had to turn to the computer because I just kept hearing like bing, bing, bing. You know, people just
doesn't mean they subscribe, but they can download the app.
No, actually people, I couldn't see the downloads and the subscriptions until the next day, but actually people on the website live chatting me, like, I saw your segment.
Yeah.
We think about this all the time. And then the emails were flooding in, all supportive messages, all people saying, I actually have this concern. People, you know, of course, giving me advice on how to like morph the app and update it. And then people even asking me to expand it to humans because they're like, they have an elderly parent.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, we want to use this app, but for them, like if they don't come home in a certain number of time, their timer expires. So
I mean,
that's something I'm
dementia
considering.
that like leave their house and they're, you know, the silver, what do they call that? Silver alert. They're looking for your grandpa or whatever.
Amber alert.
Amber alert, I think, is for when kids are abducted. Silver alert is like, we can't find grandpa, and this is the car he had, and the car's missing. And they have him at least in New Jersey. I would assume New York too.
That makes sense. Silver alert, silver hair.
Right. Exactly. Silver alert. What was the question I was just going to ask you about? Crap. What was it? What was I going to ask you? It was about the. Let's talk about. So one of the sharks brought up. I think it was Kevin from Fubu. About the intellectual property, right? Because you have an app.
Oh, Damon. Yeah, Damon.
Brought it up. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. It's with Fubu. Yeah. So there's a name, obviously, and there's a logo, and the app itself is intellectual property. So you don't have a trademark on the name, I don't think. I went to USPTO, and Woof is a trademarked name in the pet space by someone else. So where are you with that? Because you told him that you didn't have it, and he kind of shut you down.
Yeah, so the business name is Woof. The actual company name is Woof Help LLC.
Okay.
So, and on the App Store, there's, you know, tons of apps that, you know, kind of have similar names. But for right now, the app is named Woof. And, you know, if I need to change it, I'm going to change it to Woof Help, essentially. That's where we're at. Okay,
so you haven't gotten any, like a cease and desist or something like that. No. All right. You might want to, what you might want to do is go to uspto.org. You do a search for the trademark, you'll see it. There's a lot. This is not just one Woof. There's all kinds of different iterations. But there may be one that's like somebody owns the name and they're not using it, and you might be able to buy it from them for not too much money, you know, something like that.
Yeah, I'd imagine Woof is probably tens of thousands of dollars. So,
well, I think who has it. I mean, if they're, you know, if you're like, listen, I could pay you $500, but we're a small company, but we need the name, and they're going, now pay me $10,000. And we're like, have a nice life. Sometimes if you just keep it down and you don't file a trademark application, you don't get cease and desist. I went through this with the podcast. So I filed a trademark for the Accidental Entrepreneur. I get a cease and desist from entrepreneur.com, Entrepreneur Magazine. It's the same company, it's a media company. And we got into this whole thing, and at the end of the day, I don't think that they could have opposed my mark because I wasn't looking to trademark entrepreneur. It's a common used term. It's probably not even protectable anymore. I just wanted the accidental. So, and there are other accidental entrepreneurs. There's books, there's other web podcasts, whatever. At the end of the day, I withdrew the application. I said, listen, you leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. And they went away. But I just put a TM by the name, which is probably what you should do. You put a TM, it just claims some sort of common law protection as you use the name. Trademarks are based on use. So if the other guy owns it and you're using it, and they never do anything with it, you might be able to get it, claim protection as well.
Yeah. So I have some contingency plans for if I do receive that letter one of these days. But and I'm also gonna, in terms of branding, actually, it's a good segue. I right now, if you're familiar with the logo, it's just kind of the pug and it says Woof.
Yeah.
But I want to change that to add actually a superhero cape on the pug. So then it's obvious because it's like, you know, and then the caption or the subtitle could be like your pet's hero or superhero, right? And then it's like a brand. It's a superhero that's designed to rescue your pet. That's what Woof is. It's kind of like self-explanatory from the logo that we're here to rescue your pet.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I don't think you got any deals on the show and that was aired. Did you eventually get some investors because of the show?
Oh man, yeah. So this last month has been kind of wild ride. I'll tell you about this. So
today is the middle of April, so it's been out for only a month while we're filming the podcast.
Yeah. So I've had, I'd say 10 people in total reach out, some legit, some out of their minds. I'll tell you one deal so the first person that reached out, he reached out via live chat, said he is, has a lot of family money, wants to invest in a company. So I heard him out, and he was his offer to me was $35,000 in exchange for 15% equity, which I already wasn't going to do. On top of that, he wanted 10 cents on each subscription sold for life. And if that didn't somehow equate to $10,000 of revenue being paid back to him every year until he recouped $35,000, I'd have to give him majority stake of the company. And I was like, this has to be, I was like, I don't even know who came up with these terms, but it was like, your attorney, you should fire them or whoever you spoke to about this.
That deal.
It's insane. And then, so that was the craziest one I heard. I also met with this family business that wanted to actually buy a majority stake in the company at 80%, but for like $500,000. And I said no to that.
What was your valuation on Shark Tank? What did you go in with?
$1 million. $1 million valuation.
That's reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah. So they wanted to do buy 80% control ownership of the company, and then all the money that they paid towards it would go back into the company. I wouldn't be able to just keep that money. I'd be still running it.
Right. They'd be investing money in the company, but it wasn't 8 million. I mean, 800,000.
No.
Right.
No, it was I was like, I at least want to hear that number, but they were like, no, we want to do significantly lower than your Shark Tank valuation. And then, so I said no to that. And then I have everything else besides that's been legit. Like actually, there's an accelerator program that I'm working through right now.
Oh, nice.
For talking to them about, pretty significant capital. And then there's a really nice husband and wife who run an accelerator as well, but they also just do straight investments, who I'm also talking with. And that actually might close in the next couple of days here.
Yeah.
So I have a few offers out there that I'm kind of, finalizing, but I think I'll probably land an investment that makes sense in the next week, honestly. So it's exciting and crazy times here.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good lesson for people, right? It doesn't happen overnight. You come up with a great idea. I know people see it on Shark Tank. They get a deal. They think, oh, life's wonderful. But there was a journey to get there, and you got to be persistent. And over time, right, you've made pitches. You've talked to companies. You've talked to people that was bullshit. Eventually, things come your way and it starts falling into place. Like you get involved in this accelerator and you meet this other couple and they believe in you. That's what it takes. It doesn't take somebody who wants to rape your company and take all of it. I've had, I'm not in the cannabis space, but I have clients that are in the cannabis space and they're raising capital or whatever. There are capital investors that want, 80% of your company for, $500,000. And most of these companies have $10 million pre-money valuations. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? We're a women-owned business or a veterans-owned business. We can't give away 80% of the company. But they're not the right people to invest in your company. You're not going to do it with a guy who's going to death spiral the company into owning, 80% of your company for $35,000.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But he thinks he can make enough pitches and find a desperate person to, but if somebody's that desperate, their business idea is probably not that valuable.
Yeah. I was actually pretty offended by that offer. I was like,
time, basically. Yeah.
Because this company doesn't need that much capital to run. I don't need $1 million. So I could get by. I make plenty of money myself. I could, put that money into the company, but
bootstrap.
I do want to get things moving, quickly. Because I think this company with that whole partnership model I outlined, I think this could easily be, $5-10 million company on an annual basis in 3 to 5 years easily.
Well, you're talking about subscription-based people, and then you're going to need some sort of a call center because you're going to get calls all the time. Once you get enough users, it's just a question of how many users you're going to get calls every hour, right? If you're
and luckily
you have alarms, you get calls all the time. That's just what it is. If you have a big enough user base.
Yep, and I have that actually outlined. I have one of my friends owns a call center. So I think I have that So I have things, everything's pretty much set in motion. It's just
revenue,
capital,
right?
Yeah, capital, revenue, users, and I think those will come.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff you can outsource. You don't need to like open a warehouse and put 50 people sitting there at phones, and you can definitely build it slowly. But I think that's another thing is that people don't really think through. That's the whole like planning process, which you were doing kind of in real time. Is figuring these things out. Like you can do a lot of things with limited capital. Like you can, especially nowadays, probably making an app 20 years ago when we just got started with all this stuff was really expensive. There weren't any people ever didn't even exist, or Upwork didn't even exist. So it was difficult to do. And I used to run wasn't a Shark Tank. It was like a young entrepreneurs academy. They're still out of Rochester. They're all over the country. So we did the local one, and we used to have like a little Shark Tank for the kids, and the kids would come. So it was this one kid who was making an app. I forget what it was for, something to do with the weather. He was into weather forecasting. He had gone to some of the stations and whatever. A really nice kid. And he gave this whole presentation about he was going to make an app. And he needed $500, whatever. One of the guys in the audience, or the shark, said, how can you do it? It's going to be 90 grand to make an app. And the kid was like, no, that was like 15 years ago. You don't have to do that anymore. And he said to this guy how you can get this done for less money than you think that it costs. This guy was just out of touch. So things move very fast. And I'm sure some of the ideas you're coming up with in 6 months, they're going to be easier to do than they were 6 months ago, because it's a fast moving industry. Geotagging or whatever they call it.
Yeah, totally. And actually, one of the coolest stories that came out of Shark Tank was this teacher reached out to me, and he said that his kids are like huge Shark Tank fans, and they watch my segment, and he asked if I could like answer some questions for them. So I'm doing a Zoom meeting with this class. They're in Utah.
Nice. Cool.
In 2 weeks. Yeah. So it's going to be a good way to give back to the community.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think the best advice you can give for somebody if they're looking to get started on their own journey, not necessarily in your space, but.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is, like I said earlier, if you have an idea, the only way you're going to know if it's even going to work is if you do it. Like I've had probably throughout my life so many ideas that I've just let go by. I'll go to sleep, or I'll just continue with my day and I'll forget about it. But if you don't like that, I acted on Woof that day, and that's why I'm here today. That's why I got on Shark Tank. That's why I'm talking to you. So if you have an idea, you have to act on it, or it's never going to happen. And two, you're going to hear no a lot. Yeah. From investors, I heard no from Mark Cuban. I've heard no from Mr. Wonderful, and you just can't let that get you down. You have to think, they're wrong.
Right.
I know this is a good idea, and I'm going to prove them wrong, and they're going to be kicking themselves in the foot in 6 months, a couple of years.
Yeah. You didn't leave Shark Tank and be like, I'm closing the company down, forget it.
No.
Right. Exactly.
No. If anything, actually, another funny story is they actually have like a therapist that they make you talk to. Yeah, they have a therapist that they make you talk to, whether you got a deal or not. And I was really down that night where I didn't get a deal.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Of course.
So when she came into my dressing room, I talked to her for like 15 minutes. I was like, this is not how I thought things would go. I was like 99% sure I was going to get a deal because of the low cost business model. I was like, they're going to eat that up.
Yeah, and
when I did it,
stuff they love too. Yeah.
Yeah. So she, she was like, all right, well, I'm going to check in on you in like 2 days. And I stayed in California. I made like a vacation out of it for the weekend. And she called me on like Saturday, and I was already like ready and fired up to prove them wrong. I was like, hey, she called me. I answered like, hey, by the way, I'm fine.
Right.
I'm going to prove the Sharks wrong. Thanks for checking in. And she was like, oh, I'm glad that you're doing better. And yeah, that's you have to do.
They hire this person totally for liability purposes. They figure you go on Shark Tank and they emasculate you in front of the nation. They better get a therapist to talk to you. Make sure you're not going to jump off a cliff on your way home from the show. I
remember when I was in the dressing room, I heard, because you don't know what order you're going to go out there and pitch. I got there at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. in the studio. I didn't go out till 6 p.m.
So it was a long day.
So I was just sitting there, pacing back and forth in my dressing room for hours.
They fed you.
But I heard,
right?
Yeah, they gave me a good lunch, all that stuff. Yeah. And there was this. The walls are pretty paper thin, and there's like 10 rooms next to each other. And I heard, I guess one of the other entrepreneurs crying in the room next to me because he didn't get a deal. So,
oh shit.
Yeah.
It takes the wind out of your sails. You're waiting to go out there and you hear these people that are distraught. They got torn apart. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing your story. Definitely stay in touch and check in with us. We'll watch Woof. If anybody, we'll put a link in the show notes to to your appearance, right? Because I think you had sent me a link for it. If anybody wants to watch and check in with you, they can find your website. They can chat with you there. I assume you're on LinkedIn and stuff like that if people want to connect with you. Yeah,
I'm on LinkedIn. Arsy Khodabandelou is my name. And the spelling, I'm sure, will be on the podcast.
Absolutely. All right, Arsy, I'm going to play the closing credits. I appreciate you joining me today. And definitely stay in touch.
I will. Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhacker and produced by Beinhacker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.